Brothers and sisters, thanks for joining. Today I want to do a follow-up of my Pete Hegseth story from last week. Any who saw that story in the news will know that West Point and ProPublica tried to smear Hegseth and really made up a story that he had lied about getting into West Point. And so that should disqualify him from being Secretary of Defense. He would be the boss of everyone at West Point if he were to gain that position. It looks like the forces at West Point and the left at ProPublica really didn't want him as their boss, so they tried to tank his nomination with this story. So let's talk about it real quick. Found this story on Fox. I just want to react to this. Unethical garbage. ProPublica faces backlash for journalism claim after email to Hegseth gets exposed. ProPublica has stood by its reporting on Hegseth, telling Fox News Digital their reporters do their job. Well, we all know ProPublica is not really a journalism source. Well, no, I take that back. They are a modern mainstream media journalism source today, which means they're really just mouthpieces for propaganda from the Democratic Party and activists on the left. So let's see what Fox has to say about it. Left-wing nonprofit ProPublica is facing renewed scrutiny after an email exchange related to its recent unpublished story on Secretary of Defense nominee Pete Hegseth was released on Thursday. A media firestorm began earlier this week when Hegseth revealed on X that ProPublica, which he called a left-wing hack group, was planning to publish a knowingly false report that he was not accepted by West Point in 1999. Attached to the post was a photo of Hegseth's acceptance letter signed by West Point Superintendent Lieutenant General Daniel Christman of the U.S. Army. So yeah, they tried to run a story that he lied about getting in, and they thought they could get away with it with, West Point's help. They could make this claim, and by the time they had to offer a retraction, by the time Hegseth could prove it false, the damage would already be done. It would tank his nomination hearings in January. I think that was the plan. Problem was, Hegseth had the receipts. He kept his acceptance letter from all those years ago and published it and said, hey, you guys are lying. Look, we reached out, Eisinger wrote. Hegseth's spokesperson gave us his acceptance letter. We didn't publish the story. That's journalism. All right, let's see what else they have to say. After intense criticism from conservatives online, with some questioning why ProPublica did not press West Point on the inaccurate information and publish a story on that aspect. Yeah, once the letter was out there, why didn't they run a story on West Point giving them the wrong information? Again, I think we all know why. Eisinger posted a lengthy X thread outlining the steps ProPublica had taken researching the story, claiming and touting how they care about accuracy. No, they don't. And being intellectually honest. No, they don't. And had given Hegseth a fair chance to respond. Oh, okay, so they gave him a fair chance to respond to all the salient facts in the story. Questions about ProPublica's journalistic standards intensified shortly afterward when Daily Caller published an email from reporter Justin Elliott reaching out to Hegseth's lawyer, giving him an hour to respond to the allegation. That's pretty quick if you're going to turn it around that quick. That he never went to S Point. Asking, why did Mr. Hegseth say he got into West Point when it's not true? Okay? How can Mr. Hegseth be Secretary of Defense given he made false statements about getting into the military's most prestigious academy? Yeah, that sounds like it's unbiased journalism there for sure, that we're just trying to get the facts and publish a true story. That's definitely a leading couple of sentences there. They had already made up their mind that they'd already made up their mind. They didn't want Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. And so any bad story that West Point would throw them to try to stop it, they were all for. I'm not going to read it, but up above, there's a headline, Samuel Alito slams ProPublica as misleading ahead of report alleging conflict of interest from SCOTUS bench. Yeah, they did hit pieces on Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, really the more right-leaning conservative justices. Why didn't they do it on the left-leaning liberal justices? They haven't. Again, we know why. That email drew the ire of many on social media who took issue with the accusatory tone, of the email and the small window to respond to such a serious allegation, which suggested the story had already been completed without hearing Hegseth's side. Yeah, an hour to turn around something this big is pretty tough. They knew that this was going to be a big story as soon as they published it, and they were hot to get it out. But really, if you're really going to claim you're a journalist, do your due diligence. Give a little time to check the facts, and let the target of your piece have time to respond. ProPublica did not contact Pete Hegseth to get the full story, Red State writer Bonshi posted on X. They contacted him to claim he was a liar while demanding a response within 1 hour, not to offer his side, but to ask why he lied and what else he lied about. Yeah, that's I think what I read. This isn't journalism, it's unethical garbage. Nothing in Jesse's 11 tweet thread even hinted at this, is how ProPublica actually approached the story, taking the falsehood from West Point, repeatedly asserting to Hegseth that he was a liar, implying he was unfit for Secretary of Defense, and giving him just 1 hour to respond. Journalist Jerry Dunleavy posted, "Yeah, this is your normal left-wing journalist tactics. You get somebody to tell a lie. In this case, it was West Point. Then you say, based on that lie, this story has now been corroborated by multiple sources, and it's really just people running with that same story about that lie. And then when you try to clean up your mess, you go and say how ethical you've been and how you're just doing things by journalistic standards. Then somebody pulls back the curtain and sends your email, and it doesn't quite sound quite as rosy and journalistic. Again, ProPublica is not a actual unbiased news organization. They are a mouthpiece of the Democratic Party and other liberal donors who have an axe to grind. And they're sure are grinding it, but they missed their target on this one. In a statement to Fox News Digital, a ProPublica spokesperson said, "Reporters do their job by asking tough questions to people in power, which is exactly what happened here. Responsible news organizations only publish what they can verify, which is why we didn't publish the story. Mr. Hegseth provided documentation that corrected the statements from West Point." Yeah, but your email puts a slightly different spin on it to his lawyer. Fox News Digital reached out to West Point asking whether any disciplinary action had been taken against the staffers for providing false information and why procedures had not been in place to prevent this kind of error. West Point directed Fox News Digital to its previously issued statement. A review of our records indicates Peter Hegseth was offered admission to West Point in 1999, but did not attend. An incorrect statement involving Hegseth's admission to the U.S. Military Academy was released by an employee on December 10th. Upon further review of an archived database, employees realized the statement was in error. Hegseth was offered acceptance to West Point as a prospective member of the class of 2003. The Academy takes the situation seriously and apologizes for its administrative error. I bet they do. Their new boss, I think, is going to be a little upset with them here when he gets confirmed, because they absolutely tried to take his nomination. Well, I mean, it's either that or it's incompetence, right? You got a news story about the next potential Secretary of Defense, about hearings are about to start. Of course, this is going to start a political firestorm as soon as you release this information. You need to check your facts, West Point. So again, it's either gross incompetence or more likely West Point or someone at West Point didn't want Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense, so they set this whole thing up. They probably worked with ProPublica and said, "Hey, I got a story for you." That wouldn't surprise me. In a letter to West Point this week, Republican Congressman Jim Banks wrote, "It's outrageous that West Point officials would so grossly interfere in the political process and make false claims regarding a presidential nominee. Even in the unlikely scenario of OPA mistakenly making false claims, not once, but twice, it's an unforgivable act of incompetence that OPA did not make absolutely sure the information was accurate before sharing it with the reporter." Yeah, I think that's true. This week's ProPublica controversy comes after the nonprofit, which has received millions of dollars from liberal foundations. I wonder why. Faced strong criticisms for its reporting on conservative U.S. Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, which critic referred to as hit pieces. Yep, I read those stories. Journalistic inquiry into the private dealings of public officials is essential for our democracy, but honest inquiry applies the same standard to all people rather than single out those with whom one disagrees. Yep, agreed. Gretchen Reiter, Senior Vice President of Communications at Stand Together, told Fox Digital last year regarding ProPublica's reporting on Thomas. ProPublica's reporting on Alito prompted the Justice to write a Wall Street Journal op-ed where he wrote, ProPublica has leveled 2 charges against me. First, that I should have recused in matters which an entity connected to Paul Singer was a party. And second, that I was obligated to list certain items as gifts on a 2008 financial disclosure. Neither charge is valid. ProPublica stood by its reporting on Alito, but acknowledged our lessons for ProPublica in this experience. It doesn't sound like they actually learned their lessons because they just tried to do it again. They're even going to say there's lessons to be learned. Then they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar with Alito, and Alito wasn't having any of it by doing that Wall Street Journal op-ed. He let him have it back with both barrels. Well, also, since I did this story, West Point has actually said something else. So let's take a quick look at that. This is in Alpha News. West Point apologizes, confirms it accepted Pete Hegseth to the academy. The academy had falsely said that Hegseth did not even apply to the school. Well, I'm glad at least that they've now come out and apologized. I mean, they realized they need to clean up their mess too. Their new boss is not going to be happy, like I said, so they need to start worrying about their jobs next year. The U.S. Military Academy has apologized for falsely saying President-elect Donald Trump's nominee to lead the Pentagon, Peter Hegseth, was never accepted into the school known as West Point. A review of our records indicates Pete Hegseth was offered admission. I read that before. It looks the same. So new information here is right here. The first rule of good journalism is no surprises. You must give the subject of potential story a fair chance to respond to all the salient facts Einziger wrote. That must have been on his X posting. Yeah, he gave him an hour to respond. That's fair. That's good journalism. So really, the news section here is this: Senator lawyer question West Point. Parlator, in a letter to Lieutenant General Stephen Gilland, West Point superintendent, attached an email from a West Point spokesperson to ProPublica stating that Hegseth had not applied for admission to West Point. The spokesperson, Teresa Brinkerhoff, may have violated a federal law that prohibits disclosure of certain information. Yeah, I'm thinking admission records are probably privileged. In light of these concerns, I urge you to investigate this matter thoroughly and take appropriate action. Brinkerhoff, who did not return an inquiry, was also named in a letter from Senator Tom Cotton. Officials at the U.S. Military Academy should not be feeding lies to West Wing reporters about President Trump's nominees, Cotton said. West Point needs to investigate this egregiously bad judgment and potential violation of the Privacy Act. I don't know if General Galland is on active duty or retired, but if he's on active duty, I doubt he's going to get a 4th star. Looks like West Point was complicit in trying to spike the nomination of Pete Hegseth, and he's going to be their boss, so he needs to clean up West Point when he comes in. That's just all there is to it. And again, if they want to keep their jobs at West Point and do the right thing and do the ethical thing, they need to do an investigation. And if it was just incompetence, okay, fair enough. Maybe that person needs to get a bad performance review. Maybe they don't need to be fired. But if it was more than that, they should be firing everyone involved at West Point. All right, if you like this, please subscribe, ring the bell. You know what to do. Bye.